On this episode, we'll discuss equipping everyday people to live on mission. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast, the show that is dedicated to inspiring leaders and empowering healthy churches. I'm your host, Kendall Connor, and we have a great episode planned for you today. A first-time guest on our show, and that is Chip Pugh. Let me tell you a little bit about him if you have not connected with him before. Chip, he serves as the chaplain for the Tennessee Titans, which is absolutely incredible. He has spent decades discipling athletes, coaches, and leaders. He's served in collegiate athletics, strength and conditioning, and leadership development roles, including at Tennessee Tech University. Through the years, whether it be in a locker room or in a classroom or in a ministry setting, Chip has trained hundreds of leaders to live and lead with purpose. Chip, he regularly speaks at churches, to athletic programs, men's groups, leadership teams on things ranging from winning at life, discipleship making, leadership development, identity, purpose for young leaders, and so much more. He also started Be One, Make One, an organization that offers practical discipleship training. Finally, he's also the author of a new book called Made to Win, which focuses on 6 practices of Jesus for a life on mission. We're super excited to have him talking with us today as we discuss equipping everyday people to live on mission. So, before we jump in, I'd like to encourage all of you listeners to hit that follow button. We want to get you subscribed wherever you are enjoying our show. We want to make sure that you stay in the loop as we continue to release these conversations and provide valuable resources. Really, that's the best way to make sure that you do not miss a thing. So, without further ado, let's welcome Chip Pugh. Hey there, Chip. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Hey, Kendall. Glad to be here and hang out with you. Looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Of course, we read off the public bio, but something we love to ask all our guests when they come on is there anything that goes beyond the bio, maybe that we didn't get to talk about, maybe that your family and friends would know about you?
Well, what most people were surprised to find out is I played college football, and most
Wow.
folks say, "What position did you play?" And I love to get them to guess because I've lost over 100 pounds since I played college football many, many years ago. I was an
Oh,
offensive lineman.
wow. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I get a good surprise from people. Most of my players are like, "I got to see a picture. I don't believe it." Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, of course, I'm just excited because not everyone even. Sometimes we don't even think about when it comes to these teams in the NFL or any of the other professional sports that there would be necessarily a chaplain, someone that would be speaking into them and being there for them. That's amazing. How did all of this start? Tell us about your journey on this thing.
Well, it's been awesome. The Lord, probably like a lot of folks that are listening, the Lord has been gracious over time
Mm,
because I do not deserve to sit in the seat I'm in or have all the opportunities that He's given me. But it's because
wow.
of His grace. He came after me pretty hard in college. I tell people that I had a relationship with church growing up, but I did not have a relationship with Jesus really till
Wow.
I came into college, and he began to wake me up, and
Yeah.
I was put actually on a college campus. Ohio University at the time was considered the number one party school in America.
Wow.
and,
Wow.
and with this little congregation that was great for college students, brought several of us in, and that I was connected to through the fellowship I was connected with, and they really did a great job of creating a community where I would spend time with them, not only on Sundays, but they
Yeah.
let me come into their homes. And over time, I started to see real Christianity at a time where I was trying to figure out what was real for me.
Hmm.
And at uh, my sophomore year, I was injured and
Hmm.
was unable to play football. Was missing all these trips and felt like I was, like a lot of young guys. I don't know if I'm good enough to do what I'm doing, but now I look back and see the Lord's timing because I was injured, I had more freedom
Wow.
to do some things during the week, and there was a guest speaker in town doing a revival meeting, and he just happened to be a former NFL player himself. And my father called me and said, "You need to go hear this guy speak." And I know my dad was,
Yeah.
he knew I was one foot in the world, one foot, trying to
Yeah.
be around the Lord. And so I got around this guy. His name is Willie Franklin, just phenomenal evangelist. And he began to take me under his wing and
Mm.
show me what it could be to really live my life on mission. And from that moment forward, I started seeing my life as a missionary to the people who are right there in my world, in my locker room, on my college
Yeah.
campus. And honestly, I've not really left that environment, Kendall, for
Yeah.
25 years. I've either been connected to a college campus or to an athletic program. And that's where I've learned what it is to live my life on mission. And then I've went over into campus ministry and vocational ministry as well and tried my
Yeah.
best to teach those principles to others and share them. And so really it's the Lord.
Yeah.
He's put me in this spot, and here I am at the highest level in our sport. Again, not deserving, but because he was just continued to use me, and because of connections that I have, I was able to get my foot in the door. And I'm actually I work day to day on team development work with our players, our coaches, our staff to help with leadership
Yeah.
development. But then I get to be the chaplain for the team and just be available. Players, staff, anyone, do Bible studies. It's just a great, great opportunity to share the love and life of Jesus with those around me.
It's incredible, and I love, when we're talking through different guests on the show, every story is unique, but they share so many similarities at times. Really, I mean, it's, God can sometimes meet us in unexpected ways, and to see where He can take us, and whenever people are willing to be used by Him, right? Like I think that's the big thing that I take out of it is, man, if we'll open ourselves up to, for God to use us, man, there's so many incredible things that can come, the journeys that come and the stories that happen because of just how good He is, and when people make themselves available. So I love your heart in that. I love hearing that story, and I know that as a part of that journey, you also started an organization. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, be one, make one. A small team of us, decided that what if we shared some of these principles of being a missionary just in everyday life
Yeah,
for folks? We shared that with as many churches as we could, and we've had elderships that would bring us in, and we've done seminars, workshops, and those have been great. But what we found ourselves doing is spending time mainly with leaders who then can take that and then use it for their congregation or their community.
yeah,
So the name itself speaks that: be one, be a disciple,
yes,
and we can talk more about where that came from, because it's a pretty pretty big story in my life that has helped me understand that principle of who you are in Christ, and out of that make one. Literally think about one, the one that God puts in front of you every day. So I get up every morning and pray, Lord, just send me one. And
mm,
so that's really the heart of our ministry and the heart of our training, is to help people see the amazing value that you have as a disciple of Jesus, a unique person with talents, gifts, and abilities that the Lord wants to use where you are in your own little mission field, and then
yes,
see that one in front of you that that is that really needs to hear the story of what God's done in your life. And
wow,
we've seen pastors, ministers, elders, preachers come alive in a new way because,
Yeah.
uh, you know, there's a lot of leaders out there that are equipping others that have that I found have found themselves not personally connected to the mission, not
Mm.
really having the opportunity to live it out because they're spending so much time serving others. And so it's fun to see this
Yeah.
leader go, "Oh yeah, I'm supposed to reach my neighbor too. I'm supposed
Right.
to
Right.
be in the mission field myself." And so that's one of the biggest joys of our ministry when we see leaders uh, come alive again.
Yeah.
Maybe like the sign that's behind your head. Remember why you started. Like
Yeah.
these ministers that've gotten into it. Remember what got you into this. Let me take you back to that and help you maybe reawaken that fire again.
I feel like right out of the gate, that is an amazing takeaway for these leaders that are on the other side of this is to just, yeah, in not getting so, we can get so easily caught up in the day to day of the ministry, right? Sunday comes every 7 days. There's always different logistics and things like that. You're planning your services. There's also any person that's serving on a church staff would tell you that there's so much to do. There's so many logistics and things like that. But at the very core of this thing, remembering why you got started and getting back to, again, um, reaching that neighbor, reaching the people that God has put in your life that are outside of the four walls of the church. So that's a great reminder today, right out of the gate. I really appreciate that, Chip. I know we touched on this a little bit, so I want to hear a little bit more about your role. I know that our listeners, they may have never gotten a chance to hear directly from someone who's working in team development or a chaplain role for an NFL team. Can you tell us a little bit about what that role looks like? What's your day to day look like? What's it like working with the athletes and the coaches and the staff? And how has that kind of shaped your leadership?
Yeah, so currently I'm working in the National Football League with the Tennessee Titans, and we've got young men who have reached the pinnacle of their profession, in their
Yeah,
sport. In fact, it's this time of year in the spring, you've got these guys that are coming out of college and looking for that opportunity. And you get the big names that get drafted, and then you've got all these other guys that are just looking for one
mm,
opportunity. And it's really perfect for what God has shaped me to do because I love to find people who are in that transitional time in their lives where they're thinking,
mm,
what's next? Anytime someone's thinking, okay, what's next in my life? Like even someone who moves to a new area or they just had a baby, just got married, they're thinking, all right, what should I be doing next?
yeah,
And it's a really good time to say, well, let's sit down and think about your vision, your goals, where you're headed. And so I've done that with college students primarily over the last couple decades, and especially athletes from all different sports. But
yeah,
now I get to zero in on these young men and help them think about where are they headed. And so I do leadership training, yes, but really it's packaged within what I call it the winner's mindset. And I think, okay, where are
mm,
you headed? Are you thinking of
right,
yourself as a winner? And the book that we'll talk about in a moment syncs up with some of this mentality. I've been writing that for actually a couple years before I got this job.
wow.
So it predates what I'm doing, but the Lord, always knows how to use the things that
Yeah,
He's got
yeah, he
planned for
does.
us. And so what I do is I say, okay, you want to go here, you want to do this, and I sit down and think about their goals, their vision, all that. But then I say, well, who do you need to become to do those kinds of things, to
Wow.
step into that vision? And so we talk about character development. And I don't know, I didn't know for a long time myself, but I'm sure most people don't know how much professional sports teams they think about the person. At least our organization does. We want to
Yeah.
help this person be the best person they can be because you're not going to be able to handle all the responsibility that's on you as a
Right.
football player, and all the money that hopefully you will make in that sport if you can't carry it with that character. And so
Wow.
I spend time talking about character development, and then those that choose to come to our Bible studies, our chapel sessions, that's of course voluntary, but we do have a pretty large contingency of players that value their faith. And so I get to lead those as well as bring in some guest speakers and just provide resources for
Yeah.
these guys. And the rest of my time is simply being available. Uh, a lot like the ministers, I'm sure, that are listening to this, is just you've got these appointed times, but then it's a lot of the things you end up doing are things you didn't see coming.
Yeah.
And someone will pop in and say,
Absolutely.
"Hey, can I talk?" And of course, and I'm an open ear to them and to help them have the resources they need to grow.
Well, I know that that makes a big difference, and I also think about the influence that, these players have and, at the impact that is being created through all of that. So I really, appreciate and value the things that you're bringing to the table, Chip. It also reminds me of these ministry leaders that are listening to this today. What good reminders it is to number one, even something as simple as not becoming frustrated um, when the random things pop up, but you
Mhm.
remembering that that's an opportunity, and God has kind of put you in a unique position. I mean, these ministry leaders as well to be able to be that open ear, and it makes a big, big difference for people. But even being able to speak into people as they're going through different seasons, as they're going through different moments in their life. And again, I love that you mentioned preparing yourself for where God is trying to take them, their next step in their journey, making sure that they're the right person and they have themselves in order, right? And that's even a word that I feel like for our listeners today, they can take from that is I think about the next season that's coming, the thing that you're praying for, the thing that you're trying to build in your ministry, and taking an honest assessment and saying, like, am I ready for the thing that I'm praying for? Am I ready for
Mm.
the increase that we're asking God to bring? And so that's a good principle that I feel like we can all take no matter what role we're in, but especially for these ministry leaders, as they're praying for the increase, as they're praying for new guests to walk into their church, or for all these different things. So that's really good. You did talk about the book. I'd love to hear about that because that seems like it's going to be a good resource for anyone who's trying to focus on living on mission. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, Be One Make One is our organization that where we provide discipleship training, and
Okay.
in that training, the core of our training is built on 6 skills of
Okay.
Jesus, and so that's where the book lands. Are these 6 practices that anyone can practice from day to day, and we really
Yeah.
see them as rhythms of life that follow the example of Jesus. And they are for church leaders, they are for ministers, pastors, but they're for anybody like myself in any vocation. And and so we get there in the book, but the way we get there is we think about the path to winning. Now, I mean that in 2 different ways. I mean, first of all, are you winning personally?
Yeah.
Are you headed in the direction that helps you do what God put you on this planet to do and be who He designed you to be? And we might say maximize your potential. But I also mean that as are you winning others to Jesus?
Yeah.
Because really, the way I see it, Kendall, is it works hand in hand. When I really got serious about the mission of Jesus, when I was in my mid to late college years, and I started thinking, okay, I think I'm supposed to tell others about Jesus, and I put myself out there and didn't know what I was doing. It actually made me maximize my personal potential because it made me step my game up, in everything I do.
Yeah.
So I thought,
Yeah.
man, I've got to help these people. I got to be an example. And
Yeah.
but the other way around works too. If you really chase greatness in any aspect of your life, I believe that eventually God will show you what Jesus has been saying the whole time. When you give up your life, lay it down for
Wow.
Him, that's when you
Wow.
actually save it. That's when you find what you're looking for. So I like the phrase maximize your potential in His mission. That's what winning looks
It's
like.
good. Yeah.
Because you wanna maximize who you are, but it's really not about you. It's in His mission. And so Mark 1:17 or Matthew 3:19, Jesus says, "Come, follow me, and I'll make you become fishers of men." The book kind of hangs on that process of when Jesus invites us to come follow Him, He helps us then become someone, become a fisher of men, and then
Yeah.
it ends in becoming involved in His mission. But I love that phrase "become" because Jesus is saying there's this person that I've created you to be and this
Right.
shape I've got for you in my mission, and I want to show you how that's done. He invited those guys to follow him and they changed. And that's what I've seen in
Right.
my life is I've turned around and gone, wow, what happened? I used to want to do that. Now I want to do
Right.
this.
Right.
And these used to be my goals and dreams. Now my goals and dreams are about how can I help others know him, but then I get what I was trying to go after in the first place. I actually have the life I wanted to live. It
Wow.
makes me more careful and more prudent with my finances. It makes me take care of my health and my relationships, but not out of self-preservation, but about how can I help others know
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the book kind of hangs on that, and then we go through some steps to take people through, and um, yeah, and then we land at those skills.
Well, that's really good, and I mean, you bring up so many different things. I love that you said you kinda ended up where you wanted to be, but through a better way, right? And it
That's
just
right.
it reminds me of my own story of, I've often said, I was like, everything good that I have in my life, I can credit to giving my life to Christ, right? It is, so many things that I once dreamed about when I was young. I just think about, looking over my story and the way that things have come about. Yeah, I definitely 100% credit it to putting my faith in Christ and to see the journey with that. I mean, it's just amazing how he can work things out the way that he does. So I love that, and it seems like with some intentionality, we can set that up and help other people on that journey. I think of the pastors and the ministry leaders that are listening to this today that are speaking regularly who have opportunity in their community. They have opportunity that you and I don't have to be able to speak to these
Mhm.
people in their town and in their city. Um, and being able to speak to that into other people, being able to show that, if they can follow that same path, how much of a difference it can make. But again, and going back to your principle of be one, make one. This is basic discipleship making, right? Changing our priorities and focusing on the things that God would have for us rather than following our own path. And so it's pretty powerful stuff. I was thinking about some of the different things that you mentioned that are in the book, and of course, we can't talk through all the practices that make up this life of Jesus that He's modeled and things like that. But I know that one of the practices that you mentioned is knowing who you are. That's like your identity, your gifts, your talents, abilities. I wanted to ask, why do you think that's an important starting point for someone who wants to live on mission?
Yeah, the skills is an acronym, SKILLS, and that first skill is speak your purpose.
Mm,
And we really do believe that it's appropriate to start there because as the organizational name, be one, make one. If I'm going to make a disciple, I need to first be one.
yes.
And when I say the word be, I think about this aspect of identity. You know, from the beginning of the scriptures, God's been
Yes.
speaking into us how important identity is and who he is, first of all, to know who he is. And then Jesus comes on the scene and says, I am. He speaks those words of
Mm.
identity and purpose.
Right.
And
Right.
out of that identity, he lived out his purpose. And so I think it's great for people to think, well, who did he make me to be? And then what would that look like in this world around me? Not just in my job, but whatever job I'm in or wherever I am. So personally, I have a purpose statement that I can pick up and put in a vocational ministry position where I have been, and I am somewhat now today, but it also picks up and goes into, I was a strength and conditioning coach for a number of years.
Right.
I even whenever I go and just go to the grocery store, I think I'm
Yeah.
still that person
Mm.
who he made me to be, and I have a purpose. And so we take people back to speak your purpose. It's the unique way that God's wired you. And we
It's
begin with
good.
identity. We actually begin with your own name. What does your name mean? And
Mm.
because it's one way to think, yeah, who am I before I did anything right or wrong? What was spoken over me?
Wow.
In many cultures, names are chosen that way. The culture I grew up in, North American culture, not usually. Usually it's like, oh, this sounds good,
Yeah.
And my name, I just so happen to be the fourth. I'm Charles Clyde Pugh the fourth, and
Wow.
I thought, well, man, I'm not even that unique, I'm just the fourth. And so a long time through my life, I've shied away from that name. I
Mm.
was given the nickname Chip. And Chip means you're like your dad. It means chip off the old block. But whenever I was challenged to think, well, what does my name mean? I went back and looked. The word Charles means free man.
Wow.
And I went,
Wow. I
you
didn't know
talk
that.
about
Yeah.
you talk about gospel driven words. So that took me to, well, who made me free, and why, what's the significance of that for what he wants me to do in this world? So within my purpose statement and our system, we teach people, they say your name, what does it mean? And then how did the Lord speak that to you through the gospel?
Wow.
And it's so awesome to see
That's
people
powerful.
again come alive and go, whoa, you mean
Yeah.
even in my name, I can hear the Lord and what his desires are for my life? And
Wow.
then we go from there and say, well, what has he made you to do? And we think about spiritual gifting and such. So that speak your purpose, it's a great experience, but it also points me back to this is exactly what Jesus did. He
Right.
said, I am with his identity, famously in book of John, of course, those 7 times. But he also looked at his disciples and said, you are.
Yeah.
You are the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. He
Mm.
looked at Simon Peter and said, you are a rock, and gave him really a new name that
Right.
involved his purpose. So you can see that biblically before Jesus came to the earth, all through the Old Testament, we see God saying, wear your name, for
Mm.
me. And so we start there and then set, and then again go into the mission of Jesus. How does he want to use that in his mission? It's really fun to see people come alive in that process.
Something that I think is so interesting about that is, depending on what age they hear that in, they may have gone 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, hearing that name every day of their life, possibly never looking beyond the surface level of what that could mean. But I think that's really cool.
Yeah, Dale Carnegie says that your name is the most important word in your language. And
Wow.
because you think about how many times you've heard your name,
Mm.
and you link that up with what the proverb says about the value of a great name. And then opposite of that, if someone doesn't think well of their name, how they're hearing something over and over that's spoken over them in a
Wow.
negative way.
Yeah. Right.
And we know the power of words. They can bring life
Yeah.
or death. So what if we say, "No, God, redeem my name,
Yeah.
make, make me useful in your mission, but begin with me." And then I take that and say, well, let me share that with someone else. and see their value. So
Yes.
the third skill is invest in the one. We help people say, all right, well, how can I invest in others? And that's one of the ways is encouraging them, seeing their value, because I know my value from the Lord. Let me see their value and love them as I have been loved.
Mm, such good stuff. It gets me thinking a little bit about I know that there are Christians, they're followers of Jesus, they may not always be able to kind of connect their value, their name, the thing that's God's put inside of them with necessarily being a disciple maker. Even the idea of making disciples can be intimidating to some. Um, I guess maybe my question to you is how can church leaders help that everyday person to recognize that they are called, that they're equipped for more. They're equipped to reach people in their community or their neighbor, as you said earlier.
Kendall, I think one of the reasons people don't win in life, but also don't win others to Jesus because they don't expect to.
Mm,
They
wow.
expect that the pastor, the minister, the elder, they're supposed to do that, not me. And maybe even the church leader is not expecting to win as a leader of the congregation either. And that
Mm,
goes back to what they think of themselves, which comes back to what does God think of me? As my view grows of how
wow.
awesome God is and His love and His
Yeah.
mercy, and then I go, wait, that's for me. Well, that's true about anybody. So I when I help people lift their eyes to God and say, look at what He thinks, what He has said about you, that He sent His only Son to die for you on the cross. He loves you that much. That makes me then eventually, as I process that turn and go, well, wouldn't you expect that I would do something with that, and
Yeah.
be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, which, just from the very beginning, was this mindset of growth. And then Jesus then looks at his disciples and says, go therefore and make disciples of all nations. And in that, packaged in that, there is
Yeah. Yeah.
an implication that it would be passed on because teach them to observe all
Right.
things that I've commanded
Right.
you. So if they're supposed to go make disciples and teach others to do the same thing, that eventually that trickled down to Kendall and Chip, and so
Yeah.
evidently he expects that I can do that.
Right.
And so I try my best to help people see that you should expect that God can work through you. Then, after we go through that, all right, now what would that look like? It doesn't have to look like me or anyone else. We don't have the same vocation. We don't have the same talents, gifts, abilities, same circle of influence. My wife is a different person than me, but she is a
Yeah.
disciple maker, and
Right.
her mission field is different than me. And first, first and foremost, our two daughters are her mission field and mine, but that's where she looks first, and then she looks out from there of how God wants to use her. I look out from here how God wants to use me outside of our home, and it's not about numbers because one disciple is our mission. That one in front of me,
Yeah.
and so
That's
that's how
good.
I think that we help people see the value of themselves. Therefore, God can use you. In fact, you stop and think about it. God said that He has chosen vessels, His chosen way of distributing the message of Jesus through us, through human beings. He didn't need us to do that, but He chose to do it. That
Wow.
says something about what He thinks of His
Yes.
creation.
That's really good, and I love that you pointed out that, it's gonna everyone's story is gonna look a little different. Their way that they can impact, will look a little bit different. It may be in a different setting. It may be in a different quantity of people. It may be, there's so many different skills that go into how that plays out. But at the end of the day, I love that you just said you've gotta focus on the one that's right in front of you, because here's what I know is that, Again, we can get so caught up in the details. We can get caught up in, what exactly is it going to look like? But I think if every person that's listening to this today, and I'm taking this myself as a challenge, is to really just think about, as we head into this week, what is that one person that God's put in front of me to impact? And that I feel like that's something that you could wake up thinking and praying and making that your prayer each day is, God, who can I impact today? And we can't get caught up in, how many people it would be, or will I stand in front of this many people, or that kind of thing, but focusing on the one that's right in front of you at the moment. It's a great reminder for today. I'm curious, I know that, you get to speak into so many different people, so many different groups. When it comes to these ministry leaders, our audience of folks that are listening today, they may be pastors, they may be on a church staff, or they may even be volunteering. What encouragement would you offer to them today on this topic? What encouragement would you say for them about living on mission and keeping the main thing the main thing?
Yeah, when I was discipled by the man I talked about earlier in college, we were walking down the road one day and we looked down and saw a penny on the ground. And he picked up the penny and he said, that always reminds me of how many people we pass by every day that people don't notice. 'Cause who knows how long that penny has been sitting on the ground? People just pass by it. And it
Yeah,
has, like, value, not an enormous amount of value within itself, but it has potential to be used. In fact, it's not seen as very valuable these days because even the US is now doing what a lot of other countries have done, discontinuing the penny because it's too
right, right.
expensive to to make. But it does have value, it does have monetary value, and it can be invested and be useful. And so I think for all of us, if we would have the mentality of Jesus, like he saw the Samaritan woman, he saw this one person that so many people probably overlooked and walked by. In fact, in that story alone, I think his disciples themselves passed right by her when she was on the
Yeah,
way. And so they didn't see her. But
right.
Jesus saw the ones in front of him.
Mhm.
I think that if we as leaders would have that mentality, instead of thinking of the masses, instead of thinking big crowds, big groups, and stats, and we just think about one in front of God, would you lead me to one? I believe that it has helped me that in that simplicity to have a focus and an expectation that God can use me for this one. And then the fire becomes stoked. And
Yes,
we go back to what we've been talking about. I think about how can I be ready to be useful in his
yes,
mission. That simplicity helped me when I was in vocational ministry, and it has helped me in my everyday life to have focus. Takes the burden off of all the stats and numbers. But then you take that penny, that one, and you multiply it. You teach that one to go fishing as well. Look
yes,
out. Look out
right.
what God can do because those ones will multiply into other ones, and you
Yes,
turn around and you've got people everywhere that have been discipled.
that's so good. Yeah, man, it just now I feel like I need to. That's a good reminder to keep a. I need to keep like a penny in my pocket to hold on to that principle. That might be my next move on that. I got to grab one while I still can, I guess.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, I literally do that because it helps me
Yeah,
remember that. But my daughters will be in a parking lot and we'll see a penny and we'll pick it
yeah,
up. Hey, there's a treasure right there. I'm trying to
yeah.
teach them to think that way
Right. Yeah,
of ones.
that's good. Yeah, one of the big themes of our podcast is healthy churches, healthy leaders, and something that we ask all of our guests when they come on is, in your opinion, what would you say is one essential component of a healthy church?
Well, we do know that, and as you look through the book of Acts, you see over and over that the healthy church was multiplying.
Mm,
And
that's
as
good.
Jesus said, you'll know them by their fruits.
Yeah.
And as we see fruit, we know where the root is. So not that I'm judging or shaming a church when I say, "Hey, yeah, how come we're not seeing people come to the Lord?" But it is good to assess and go, "What are we seeing?"
Yeah,
And that fruit, of course, doesn't always mean converts, necessarily. It can mean growth and development of those who have been converted.
sure.
But Luke was, specific when he was writing. He did put some numbers in there and say, "Now there's this many," and this many
Mm,
were added to the church. So I would say, to keep the theme of what we're talking about, the Lord would say that there would eventually be multiplication, um, even if it's just one, and then trusting His process of that. Matthew 28, seeing disciples come to the Lord. And I don't think you put your focus simply on numbers and say, well, how many we got? Because then that can turn against you as well and make you prideful.
sure, sure.
But what you do is put your focus on, do we have a process that we are helping one another make disciples? And as we
Mm,
live out that process, we expect. So hand in hand with that is prayer, um, relying on the Lord's strength to do that. So one of our skills is lift your heart. You need to be in constant communion with the Lord, lifting your heart, what you're
mm,
feeling, what you're carrying, and handing that to the Lord. Well, as a leader, a lot of times that's other people. I'm seeing these people struggling. I'm seeing these people leaving, or I'm seeing these people not connecting to the Lord's work. I lift that to Him, and we have a process we take leaders through to help them
yeah,
do that. But simply stated, praying. So a
yes.
praying church is a multiplying church,
Mm,
in some ways. Not comparing church to church, but there will be prayer and there will be multiplication as you see through the book of Acts.
that's really good, and I love that you said we can get trapped in that comparison game. It really isn't about that, but it's about being our own best, right? And doing the best that we can and making sure that we're taking the right approach in our unique context and doing what God has called us to do. So, uh,
Amen.
that's a good reminder for today. Well, Chip, we love to wrap things up with a final five rapid fire round. Are you up to the challenge today?
Hey, let's do it.
All right. Well, here we go. So, what's one book on the subject or something similar that you would recommend to church leaders? And that's kind of a bonus because we already talked about your book. So, maybe what's another one?
I'm going to give you one that does not sound like it would fit, but it does. It's called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Old Man
Mm,
Eno.
okay.
Old one, I think out of the 60s. But
Wow.
it's all about, how can I grow in my ability to love others? That's really what it's about.
Wow.
So it's not really about being a salesman per se, but it's
Mm,
about seeing yourself as passing on the greatest treasure that's ever been known to mankind. So it does actually use,
yeah.
um, the gospel within it. It's a
Okay.
quick little narrative, but
All right.
I would lesser known book out there, Greatest Salesman in the World.
Okay. Yeah. I got to check this out. Yeah. That I haven't heard of that one. So, I'm going to have to check that one out. That'll be on my Amazon list before the day's up.
All right.
What's the last thing that you listen to on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you listen to your music these days?
I'm an '80s rock guy, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So probably Def Leppard was in there somewhere. Uh,
Nice.
this morning I've got though, in my heart, that Firm Foundation song has been in my heart this morning. So I don't know if it was on Spotify, but been singing that one.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
good, and that's maybe a good balance between the 2 options that you gave.
the Rock, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about favorite piece of technology these days? Software, technology, anything like that? Anything you're using that's helpful?
You know, I really am pretty simple. I'm a Google Doc guy and an
Yeah.
iPad guy. I don't use a ton of software, but what I do appreciate is the way Google allows me to type my stuff up and I can grab it on any device anywhere. I guess if that
Mm.
counts,
No, that's a big
Not very high
deal.
tech, but that's helpful. Google Docs are, and in fact, they took those away, I'd be a mess. So,
Yeah. That's how you know you really appreciate it is, like if you think, "If I had to go without this, I'd be in a tough spot."
yeah.
No, that's a great answer. What about a quote or some advice that stuck with you over the years?
Uh, One of my favorite quotes, Zig Ziglar, is "You were born to win, but to
Mm,
be a winner, you must plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win."
mm,
And that quote's in my book, and I think he's so right that you were born to win. My book's called "You Were Made to Win." The psalmist says, "You've been remarkably and wondrously made." That's what we know. But the truth is, you do have to do something
yeah.
with what God's given you, and you should expect that He can use you. I love that quote.
No, that's a great one, and yeah, just a reminder to walk in that potential, right? That's so good. What about, what's one thing that you'd like to communicate to our audience of church leaders today?
God has put you where you are for a reason,
Mhm,
right where you are. Um, and you may be thinking, maybe you're on the top of the mountain right now and everything's going great, or you may be down in the valley, but you're supposed to be there at this time, and He wants to use you. And so I would say, be the disciple right there who makes disciples right where you are. And let Him
mm.
use you.
That's really good. Chip, this has been awesome. I know that people are going to want to hear more from you. They may want to follow you and stay connected with your work. What's the best places to do that?
Be1make1.org. The number one, BE1MAKE1.org. And we've got our team is there to help train and coach and provide resources. We'd love to help in any way we can.
Very cool. And we'll definitely link that up to make it super easy for everyone to find. We'll put that in the show notes. We'll also link up your new book and we'll look up all your social media and things so everyone can follow to make that super easy because this conversation has been awesome. Chip, thank you so much for investing in our leaders and sharing with us today.
Kendall, I appreciate everything you're doing, brother. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, I would say that to you as well. It's amazing to see and love hearing your story, and it just all has been really great today. So for all of our listeners, be sure to check out all the things that we'll link up, all those resources. Check out the book, check out Be One Make One, and I just love hearing his heart for making disciples. What a good reminder for us today. If this episode has encouraged you, if it's challenged you would you consider sharing this with a friend? Maybe someone that's on your church staff, someone that's volunteering with you, maybe even another pastor or another church friend that you have. Help us to get this in the ears of as many church leaders as possible. Again, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button wherever you're enjoying our show. And I would say until next time, keep leading well, and we'll see you right back here next week on Church Leadership Lab.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.